Welcome to the Kennedy Report, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kennedy Hall. There's a bunch of Vigano dropping today, Vigano bombs dropping today. I was actually just preparing to record this quick here, and I saw a bunch more that we're going to have to get to over the next few days. He's come up with some amazing information about Marcel Lefebvre, of all people, the man who just keeps getting more and more vindicated. Well, in any case, Archbishop Vigano has come up with a very strong letter against the head of the Pontifical Academy for Life. You can see that just on the side of my screen here. He basically said he shares the same ideology as the Antichrist, which is pretty strong. And in the article, he says, and this is from an article entitled Archbishop Vigano, Pontifical Academy for Life President, has aligned himself with the UN WHO. And he says, and this was actually written by Vigano, and he says, the president of the Pontifical Academy for Life, Vincenzo Paglia, in the course of an interview given to an Italian television channel, Rai Today, on August 26, and you can find a link for that in the actual article, referred to the infamous Law 194, legalizing abortion as a pillar of our social life, scandalizing millions of Italian Catholics who are faithful to the magisterium and are still mindful of the fiery words of John Paul II against the horrible crime, which in Italy alone has sacrificed over 6 million innocent children on the altar of selfishness and liberal Antichrist ideology. So there you see it. He talks about this idea that a cardinal would say that a law legalizing abortion in Italy is part of a pillar of Italian life. And he says this is part of an Antichrist mentality. He continues. He says, the just indignation of the ecclesial body in response to the statements of the president of an academy founded by John Paul II, precisely in order to oppose abortion, is accompanied by the applause of the advocates of reproductive health and the interruption of pregnancy, who are always ready to accuse the church of interference when she speaks with the voice of Christ. Again, you see here this mentality that speaking against Christ and for Christ. Obviously, if he's speaking against the voice of Christ, Christ would be pro-life, then that technically means he's speaking in an antichrist, against Christ perspective. He continues, bring this up here. He continues, but yet offer praise as soon as her worst exponents prostitute themselves to be aligned to the aligned thought of the world and adopt the inhuman principles of Malthusianism as their own. If you don't know what Malthusianism is, Malthus was essentially an economist and a population expert, or population growth proponent, or population control proponent. And he was actually friends with the Darwin family, shocker there, survival of the fittest and all that. He influenced a movement that was further pushed by a man named Francis Galton, who was an English scholar who basically said that the world had too many people in it. These people, these Malthusians, they have been a part of this mentality of there always being an impending catastrophe and some human lives have to be sacrificed. This is a trick as old as time. You go back to the 1800s and you will find newspapers talking about, they wouldn't call it global warming, but they would say, there won't be enough agricultural space left, excuse me, if there's more than 500 million people. Same people talked about peak oil. And this idea of Malthusianism was essentially, there's too many people. And because there's too many people, this means we have to cull the human population the same way that you cull a population of deer. This idea is as old as time. This idea can be found in the ancient world as well. It also is representative of the narrative we've been living through. Environmentalism is just Malthusianism. Follow environmentalism through all the way, and you will find an ideology where you are supposed to be sacrificed, or you're supposed to sacrifice the amount of children that God will bless you with, because the world, the amorphous Mother Earth, is in some potential catastrophe. And if you don't do it, you're an agent of destruction. This goes against the nature of creation. And this is why he says, Vigano that is, this is why he calls this Antichrist. On the altar of selfishness and liberal Antichrist ideology. He continues, he says, as shepherd and successor of the apostles, I am unable not to condemn with the greatest force Paglia's scandalous words, which contradict the gospel and the teaching of the Roman pontiffs. The New World Order, the United Nations, WHO, the European Union, the World Economic Forum, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, and all the organizations which follow the 2030 agenda consider the barbaric killing of the innocent child in the mother's womb as a right, as a pillar of social life. It is emblematic and revealing that the sect of apostates who infest the Catholic hierarchy and have occupied its highest levels find themselves aligned with the ideological positions of the enemies of Christ, not only on issues that are seemingly unconnected, like the psychopandemic narrative and green ideology, but also in the denial of the foundations of natural law, including respect for life from conception till natural death. Now, some people accuse Archbishop Vigano of being too harsh. He uses the word prostitute, for example, to talk about, well, an idea of whoring yourself out for an ideology, okay? And this is how he talks about the hierarchy. But he says he has to use the strongest possible words. And sure, there can be a definite debate about how lay people should talk about clerics. Obviously, there's a matter of manners and decorum and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I get that. Thomas Aquinas talks about subjects, so we are subjects, right? Subjects should not be speaking publicly about their superiors unless there's an absolutely grave reason. It's very subjective, so where the line is there, only God can know. But when it comes to Vigano is a bishop. The bishops have a role, and part of that role is to be prophetic. Prophetic does not mean always telling secret, hidden things that will happen in the future. That's not what prophet always means. Prophets in the Old Testament are consistently calling out the high priests, calling out the priesthood, calling out the people, using terms. Read some of the minor prophets. Read Amos. I think it's in Amos. He talks about Israel, like the nation of Israel in a religious sense, basically committing bestiality with pagan religions in very un-PG terms. Elias, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, the way they speak about the state of the religious institutional setting in the Old Covenant, it would make Vigano look like child's play. So does Vigano speak harsh? Well, he speaks harsh about things that he sees, but if something is of Satan, how are you supposed to talk about it? It's funny, I watch, Canadian parliamentary politics because of, having to do that for my job. And it's kind of interesting sometimes anyway. But, it's very polite. It's good, sir. I demand that you find a way to say that in a way that is more respectful to the Canadian values of those who respect you, And that's fine. That's equals talking to each other. Well, they are now talking about matters of existential importance. They weren't always. So I understand, you get heated about an infrastructure bill. You probably shouldn't be talking about each other as being the whore of Babylon. But when you are talking about matters of salvation, when you have someone like this Vincenzo Paglia talking about, as he says, we'll bring it up here again, when he talks about Law 194. So Law 194, it's like Italy's Roe versus Wade. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, it was bad enough when, what's his name? It was bad enough when, after Roe versus Wade, when Father Martin had his weak-kneed, or was it after Dobbs? Yeah, after the overturning of Roe versus Wade. It was bad enough when he had his really weak sort of like tweet about, there needs to be more nuance in this conversation. I understand when people are upset. Like, that was bad enough, because if you're a Catholic priest, like, the only thing you should be saying is, sweet, no more abortion, or, sweet, greatly reduced. No more right to it, I should say, in the Constitution, which is huge and cuts it down by a ton. That was bad enough. But James Martin, as bad as he is, he wasn't saying that Roe versus Wade, the decision that got the United States there, he wasn't saying that was a pillar of the social life of America in a positive way. This is really bad what this cardinal did. And there is no language strong enough. You read the New Testament, and I'm not a Greek scholar, but I'm pretty sure that St. Paul actually sort of blends together kind of swear words to use a word to talk about something. Because there's a situation where condemnatory language needs to be so unbelievably strong to emphasize just how detestable a thing is that there's almost a need for it. I'm not saying go start using swear words. I'm just saying Bishop Vigano is an apostle. Okay. So if he says things like, you are an Antichrist figure, or you prostitute yourself like the whore of Babylon or something, like, if he says things like that, he's just speaking like a bishop is supposed to speak when the situation arises. And when a cardinal who's in charge, and I'm sometimes a little hard on John Paul II because of how he treated the SSPX, but he was obviously a champion of pro-life causes. Of course he was. That's inarguable. Okay. He was very strong about abortion. He was very strong about contraception. And those are, God be praised for that. So if you are the head of an organization that's named after a pope who clearly was an enemy of the abortion industry, and you say that the Italian Roe versus Wade is a pillar of Italian society, that is beyond reproach. It's unbelievable how offensive that is. It's remarkable. Okay, so Bishop Vigano is completely correct in comparing this situation, in my opinion, to an Antichrist ideology. See if there's any left here. Yeah, he says, it is disconcerting that no one among my brothers in the episcopate, and least of all among the members of the College of Cardinals, dares to raise his voice to condemn Paglia's delusional words and call for his immediate resignation from the Pontifical Academy for Life. May the faithful admonished by good priests, admonished. You should be admonished by your priest. Our priest yesterday started his sermon telling the whole congregation, you all have a sickness and you need a lot of help. And he was talking about original sin. Yeah, we were admonished by our priest, and it's good. Confession line was full. Thanks be to God. He says, may the faithful admonished by good priests move themselves far away from these wolves in sheep's clothing and pray to the Lord, asking him to intervene to save his church, occupied by a Sanhedrin of corrupted and perverted men who continue to crucify Jesus Christ in his mystical body. Well put, Archbishop Vigano. He's a bishop. He has every right to say that, saying that it's a Sanhedrin. Again, he's going back to this reality that the priesthood at the time of Jesus Christ was corrupted, and Christ would speak out about that. The apostles before, or the prophets before that prefigured the coming of Christ, they would speak about it. And the apostles after, who take over the fulfillment, which is the new covenant, and run and rule and govern the church in Christ's stead, they also have a prophetic role to play. And being a prophet means not just predicting things for the future, but also calling out nonsense that has to be called out. This is why, again, you see these prophets saying, like Daniel is a prophet, literally predicting things in a mystical fashion. But then there are also other prophets who are saying, you're doing this, you're going to damn your soul. Woe to you who does this, because it's a prediction in a sense of, what you're doing right now, the consequence will be X, Y, and Z. Therefore, I have to say something. So it's kind of a prediction, but only in the sense where you're just saying what is happening and the logical consequence of that. Archbishop Lefebvre was like this. People would say he was too harsh to say things like, I'll be excommunicated from Freemasonry. Lo and behold, we find out that there were a ton of Freemasons in the Curia and the Vatican. So, yeah, he was excommunicated. The head of the Congregation for Bishops, up until just before Archbishop Lefebvre was excommunicated, was a Freemason. So, yeah, if he says I'm going to be excommunicated by Freemasonry, it's literally true. Okay. Anyway, so thank you, Archbishop Vigano, for saying this. I believe this is important to say. And he's correct as well when he says, yeah, because there was a little bit of backlash. There was sort of some qualification of the statements by the hierarchy. Oh, he didn't, shouldn't have said that. Didn't really mean that, whatever. But, I'm trying to think of if I'm a journalist for LifeSite News. We're pro-life, we're pro-Christ, we're pro-family, all these things, right? I'm trying to think of a just punishment for me coming out and saying, I support Justin Trudeau's, rules that persecute Christian parents who don't want to give in to the rainbow ideology. I think there should be abortion on demand without apology and blah, blah, blah. Like, I should be fired for that. If I said that, I should be fired. I don't represent the organization. I should at least be silenced. How much, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. If you have a higher reality in your responsibility, like a cardinal and as the head of a major, as in a major group in the church, how much more severe should your penalty be? He should at least be silenced. And I'm not saying this because I'm judging him. I'm not judging him. I'm looking at what he said. I'm just going off of what Bishop Vigano said, who is an apostle and has every right to say these things, and it's public knowledge. He should be silenced. Just like many priests in the church should be silenced today. Every time a parish priest says something, has a record of saying borderline heretical or pro whatever things in homilies, he should be removed from ministry. But instead, the bishops are only removing priests who aren't vaccinated, or priests like Father Altman. It's just nonsense. Anyway, thank goodness for Archbishop Vigano. And wouldn't it be great if we get Archbishop Vigano on the show? I do speak Italian. We could have a good conversation. Maybe I'll try. I don't know. That's probably unlikely. Okay. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and tune in tomorrow because there was a new Vigano drop, where he talked about the holiness of Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre, and we're going to go over that tomorrow. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, visit thekennedyreport.com. Link is in the description. One-time donation, patron, whatever you want to do. Send us gold bullion. I'm just kidding, but not really. We endeavor to get this content out as much as possible. There is a team behind us. Thank you for all your support. This has been the Kennedy Report. And until next time, God bless.